Hello and welcome to Good Deeds, a quarterly look at your Norfolk County Registry of Deeds. Actually, this particular edition, we are going to look at the previous year and compare numbers and also talk to Registrar Bill O'Donnell about other programs at the Norfolk County Registry of Deeds. So, Bill, Happy New Year and welcome back.
Well, Happy New Year to you, Mark, and to all the staff here at Quincy Access Television. Thank you for putting this program together and giving the residents of Quincy some information on real estate. And I know sometimes statistics gets boring, but
there are those people out there that love to hear about statistics.
And I always say the registry deals with real estate statistics and deals with the biggest issue, the biggest asset most of us have, which is our homes. And it's great that Quincy Access Television recognizes that and gets this information out to people.
And we should mention that you are a guest on other access channels as well throughout Norfolk County.
Norfolk County, of course, Quincy is a large part of Norfolk County, but there's 28 communities. So Norfolk County, which we just finished 225th year of existence.
You weren't there at the beginning.
So some people might think, my kids might think I have been. But, the county goes from Quincy all the way to the Rhode Island border down in Bellingham to Cohasset out to Brookline. So there's 28 communities. And, again, what we try to do at the Registry of Deeds is our principal job, which is to make sure the documents are getting recorded accurately, securely, they're in a safe place that people can rely on it. The attorneys that get involved in your closings, whether you're selling your house or whether you're doing some of the commercial developments that are getting done here in Quincy, that they want to rely on the records, because if you can't rely on the records, then houses aren't being sold, commercial properties aren't being developed, and that's our principal function. But we like to get the information out to people, and hopefully it helps them. So we have statistics, and we can start with the statistics. And I like to say it was, and again, the statistics we were looking at are from, as you mentioned, yearly, January 1st to December 31st of 2018, compare it to 2017. And it was sort of mixed results. I like to say, as far as Quincy, a lot of times Quincy's mirroring what's going on in Norfolk County. For instance, total document volume, and a lot of the documents that recorded, we'll break it down a little, but it's everything that gets recorded: deeds, mortgages, variances, discharges. When you look at the total document volume, in 2017, it was 152,927 documents in Norfolk County. But in 2018, only 141,159. So that's down 11,768 documents, or down 8%. And when you look at Quincy for the year, in 2017, it was 38,312. And in 2018, it was 35,345, or down 3,967, or down 10%. So the document volume was down, but the good news relatively to that is sales were still vibrant here in Quincy, I think because it's an attractive place to live. It's well run. So you see some communities that even though the document volumes are down, and even in Quincy and Norfolk County, deeds were down, it was still down as a percentage less than the total document volume. So total deeds in Norfolk County in 2017 was 18,533. In 2018, it was 18,124, down 409 documents, or just down 2%. And Quincy again mirrored that. It was 4,582 documents recorded in 2017 here in Quincy. And for that same period, January 1st to December 31st in 2018, it was 4,463, or down 119 documents, or down 3%. So a relatively modest decrease. The real striking number is and we have to track it by commercial and residential, is the average sale price. If you look at Norfolk County in 2017, it was $691,011.46, and in 2018, $841,414.58. That's a 22% increase, over $150,000. Again, reflecting residential and commercial, which it's both. But in Quincy, in 2017, it was $559,071.12. But in 2018, it went up to $724,809. So over $165,000 increase, or up 30%. So again, you can see,
the attractiveness of the city?
I think it's the attractiveness of the city, and it's what we hear anecdotally from lawyers and brokers saying, we just didn't have in 2018 a lot of inventory to sell. Okay. Now, towards the end of 2018, that was changing, but what that meant was they, had 5 or 6 people sometimes competing for that one sale. So even though not as many deeds were being recorded as we saw, it was down a little. There was competition for those sales, whether it was in, especially the residential, but also the commercial ties into it. And so I think, yes, that the sale prices are up because there's such a limited inventory. And we see it not just an issue here in Quincy, but regionally. And recently there was some legislation proposed at the State House because housing is an issue. And but if you look at the numbers, the reason those prices are high is that the demand for housing is still there. And as I said, talking to brokers and lawyers locally, they're saying, hey, there was just, when a house came on, you could have 5 or 6 people competing for it and, waiving all kinds of contingencies because, and sometimes going over asking.
Correct.
That's something to keep in mind. As far as more statistics on the mortgages, again, it's reflecting a decrease. And Quincy and Norfolk County mirrored each other as far as total mortgages, and mortgages reflect borrowings. And again, sometimes the average home, if you're buying a house for $400,000, you might be borrowing $300,000. But when you're looking at some of these mortgages for the big, multi-million-dollar properties commercially, it's always interesting numbers there. But countywide in 2017, there was 27,563 mortgages. And in 2018, 24,503. But in Quincy in 2017, there was 2,975 mortgages recorded at the Registry of Deeds. But in 2018, 2,607, down about 368, down 12%. So in Norfolk County, it was down 11% mortgages. In Quincy, 12%. So why would mortgages be down? Well, as I said, Quincy mirrored Norfolk County. I think there was less. We just saw it. There was less deeds, so there was less sales taking place. I still think there's an uneasiness economically, and maybe that's reflected in people's decisions on whether they want to, borrow money. Maybe they're not sure about their job. Even though the economy has been good, there are people saying, hey, what happened in 07, 08, and everyone keeps saying that's coming. So maybe that's another reason people might not want to borrow money. And also there was a rise in interest rates. A lot of times what takes place nationally does affect us here locally, here in Quincy and in Norfolk County. So the interest rates did creep up. Now, to some people, some young people, they might be saying, well, a 30-year fixed is at 4%, or a 15-year, 4 something, a 15-year 4%. I'm going to wait till it comes down. Whereas some of us that have been around a while remember when 1987, an adjustable of 8% or fixed paying 18% earlier in the 80s and 70s. So. Right. The interest rates still are relatively low generationally when you compare what's happened in the past. But when you're used to low interest rates and suddenly they bump up, you might have an unrealistic view they're going to come down. And yet it's a logical view too. Some people are saying, well, wait a minute, I've already refinanced. I'm trying to put my kids through school or this or that. And I'm not going to refinance again when the interest rates have ticked up because that's extra money that you're going to have to pay over the life of that mortgage. So that was an interesting number that mortgages are down, but I think it's reflective of what's going on economically, nationally, and what's happening with the interest rates. I always speak about notices to foreclose only because even if one person's struggling with foreclosures, I always say this, that's probably one person too many. But there was, some better news when it comes to foreclosures. I always mention how Norfolk County Registry of Deeds, our involvement in foreclosures is by law when someone is foreclosing on an individual, when that lender goes to court, they have to file an action in court. They have to file a notice to foreclose at the registry. They're required to do that. So we see stats that say what's happening at the beginning. And that's our only role in foreclosures. And then we see a deed get recorded at the end. So sometimes the people got their jaw, got back on their feet, or maybe the medical crisis, they solved it, or maybe they sold the house so it didn't have to be foreclosed. But I always tell people, go to our website, www.norfolkdeeds.org. The Registry of Deeds has partnered up with two nonprofit organizations, Quincy Community Action Program. They do a wonderful job at so many levels here in Quincy, but they give people foreclosure assistance and try to reach out and give people some guidance and help them through the process. And also Neighbor Works of Southern Massachusetts, again, another nonprofit group that tries to help people out. So you have resources here in Quincy, and my advice is, if you get a notice to foreclose, don't wait to the end of the process. Get on it right away. And also, if you go to our website, the Attorney General's office has some assistance that that people can take advantage of. So please, you can also use the Attorney General's office to try to get some assistance. As far as foreclosure deeds, which is the end of the process, in 2017, countywide, it was 268 deeds. In 2018, 221. So again, that's down 47 or down 18%. And Quincy was relatively flat. 22 foreclosure deeds in 2017, 20 in 2018. So that's some good news. And notices to foreclose, which I mentioned was the beginning of the process, that's gone down. In 2018, in Norfolk County, there were 621 notices to foreclose. In 2018, and in 2019 it was 687, so it's gone down, and that's almost 11%. And again, that first step in the foreclosure process has gone down in Quincy. In 2018, there was 61 notices to foreclose that were filed on Quincy properties, and back in 2017 it was 78. So even though it doesn't seem like a big number, that's almost a 22% decrease. And again,
we should mention that the unemployment rate is at an all-time low. That certainly helps.
Sure, figures. Those are the figures you talk about. That there's policy set nationally that get reflective of what's going on around here in Quincy and around Norfolk County. So yes, unemployment rate's low. And again, there's always people get into troubles, but these are good numbers to have, and it shows you we at the Registry of Deeds try to react. We try to make us organization a relevant organization. When notices to foreclose, they were never tracked. It was always notices, and there's so many notices filed at the registry. But back in 2007, when that economic downturn started happening, I said we gotta start tracking this, and we did. We so we have a whole separate notice. That's how we can come up with the statistics. Again, trying to make the registry relevant and bring good news. It's good that there's the notices to foreclose are going down. But to those people that are still struggling, make sure you get the help. Go to those nonprofit groups, especially here in Quincy, the Quincy Community Action Program. It's a neighbor, a business, a nonprofit business. I'd like to say a nonprofit organization here that helps people take advantage of it.
And you had mentioned, of course, the Attorney General's office. There's an Attorney General Consumer Advocacy and Response Division.
Yes.
Something known as CARD. And there is a phone number, 617-727-8400. Assistance could be found there as well.
Oh, yes. So take advantage of everything that's out there. Yes.
As we're talking about looking over the year and comparing numbers from one year to the next, and talking about the economy and talking about jobs right now, as we know, there are hills and valleys if you focus in on any span of time. So certainly things are great now, but as we talked, there will be at some point a downturn.
And each year, we're doing these statistics, and I think it's great that you get them out. And statistics, there's always a story behind statistics. I don't think we're ever going to hit the years where people forget. In 2002, it was 330,000 documents. In 2003, 325,000 documents recorded at the Registry of Deeds. Just tremendous economic activity. And this year, as we mentioned this past year, in Norfolk County alone, it was 141,000 documents. So we see each year the trend has been going down. It doesn't mean the economy's been going down. As we see, we break down those statistics, and the deeds are still relatively, strong. Now, towards the end of 2018, I don't have a crystal ball, but you talk to the brokers, they say inventory has been building up, that houses aren't selling as much. But who knows? I just heard a statistic on the radio where applications for mortgages, we just talked about how mortgages were down, but applications for mortgages the last couple of weeks are up. So maybe it's reflected that maybe people are getting ready for that spring market.
Now, countywide, is there a higher concentration in residential as opposed to commercial? I think folks here in the city of Quincy will say that there's a lot more new residential than there is new commercial. Have you seen that countywide?
No, I think it's kind of a mix. Yeah, I mean, you look at the mixes of most communities. There's mostly residential, and then I mean, some of the communities out in the other end of the county have virtually no commercial, which makes it tough economically. I'm from Norwood. Norwood's always kind of welcomed businesses and has kind of a commercial mix with the residential.
Because we'll mention there is no commercial there to offset, I would assume, taxes.
Right, and in some of those towns, that's the struggle. It's always a struggle, even with a town like Norwood, trying to set the residential tax rate and not offload everything on the commercial, because you recognize that the businesses also contribute. So. What I see is each community has a mix of residential and a mix of commercial, and that at times when the residential kind of went down, the commercial was kind of hot, so sometimes it's two different markets within a real estate segment, people. But here in Quincy, I think people would agree. There's a lot of commercial development had been going on, because it's an attractive city in that regard, and as well as residential. And in some ways, some of these, even though it's residential, some of these big, apartment complexes, that's a commercial development, even though it impacts the residents, in residential. But as far as the future, it's going to be interesting to see, because I know the next quarter, traditionally January, February, March, have not been high volume sales. It's sort of, it's the holidays, it's the winter, so time will tell what the spring market will bring. But we may not see, the numbers still could continue to be kind of down when you consider traditionally January, February, March haven't been the biggest sales.
Of course, we don't know how long this federal government shutdown is going to last either.
Another impact, impact, things that happen down in Washington or nationally can affect what happens around here.
Of course.
Yeah.
Let's look at electronic recording, because that, of course, is on the rise.
Yes, electronic recording, just for your viewers, and it just shows you the modernization initiatives that take place. When I first became registered, there was no such thing as electronic recording, and suddenly, with all the advances of technology, what electronic recording is that closings can be done here at Quincy at someone's law office, or out in Bellingham at someone's law office. And when they close, they sign all the papers, they transmit it electronically. It's been authorized by the federal government as well as the state government to allow this. And the users of the registry really wanted it. We're talking the lenders, the lawyers. I mean, I'm my training is an attorney, so I'm a member of the bar associations, the Mass Bar Association, Norfolk County Bar Association, the Real Estate Bar Association. And there was this movement that, they thought it was good. I love people coming to the registry. Come by 649 High Street. Come by, use our customer service department, use our computers. It's open to the public. But a lot of people no, it's, you know, it's speed, it's efficiencies, and that's why electronic recording numbers have grown. There are two types of land, recorded land. Well, we've been doing electronic recording since 2009 there, and you can see we have over 45% of our documents that get recorded electronically now. The institutions that use the registry, whether they're the local yokel title, the lawyer or the engineers or the lenders, they're sending the documents in via electronic recording. We, and again, have to thank the legislators here in Quincy. We got legislation through that allowed us to do electronic recording in the land court, which in Norfolk County is 20% of our land. And we're one of the pilot registries. There are 21 registries, but Norfolk County is one of the pilot registries. And we have, it's been growing. We only started taking deeds in 2017, you know, transactions July 1st, 2017. And that's grown to be 25%. So, you know, the legislation got passed that allowed us to do it. And again, I think it's just trying to make the registry as efficient as it can and help the economy, help the people that are in the economy. You know, the banks, the lenders, the lawyers are saying, hey, we needed this modernization initiative, and we implemented it and are still implementing it because the land court, which oversees the land court in Boston, the judges are reviewing our statistics and how it's been going, and we get nothing but good reviews of how we're doing as far as electronic recording.
I do want to talk about mortgage discharges and the importance of those and finding out if a mortgage has been discharged.
And that's a great point, Mark. You know, we all have to borrow money, whether we borrow money to buy the house, borrow money because your kids are going to college. Interest rates, when they went down, you got a better rate, or maybe you took some years off. There's all kinds of reasons why you have to borrow. But when you borrow money, just make sure when that particular loan gets paid off that a discharge gets recorded. So when you borrow money, the bank makes sure that everyone knows you owe them money. They record a mortgage at the registry. But when that mortgage gets paid off, many times mortgage discharges don't always find their way to the registry. The big banks especially have gotten better, and some of that they were kind of compelled to get better. So what we find at our office hours when we have them, or when we go out to the civic groups, people are more attuned to checking on their mortgages to make sure they're paid off. Because what happens is, even though people say, well, wait a minute, shouldn't the lender have either paid it off or well, I paid it off, but they should have got the discharge there. They should have, but now it's your property. It's kind of your problem, even though it shouldn't be. And so that's why we say check. Go to our website. We have a document called Where Has My Bank Gone? Because people forget. Banks have merged. Some banks in the 1990s went out of business. So it allows you to track, hey, where has my mortgage gone? And if you go to our website, you could actually look up to see if your properties have been discharged, or call our customer service center at 781-461-6101, or come by our customer service center at 469 High Street in 649 High Street in Dedham, and they'll look up the information for you. And the reason that's important is when you go to sell your house, you don't want suddenly that the closing attorney, 3 days before the closing, saying, hey, you need to get this discharged, because it's not as easy as going to the local Colonial, bank here. The community banks, I'm a big believer. You go there, you get good customer service, but some of these bigger banks, it's hard to get somebody to make a decision. And in fairness to all the banks, sometimes they sent the discharges to people, but they just didn't make it clear that those discharges had to be taken to the registry. Okay. So just make sure on the mortgage discharges that, again, you borrowed the money, you paid it off. When you pay it off, make sure that that document that tells the world that it's been paid off, it's been done. And along the lines about mortgages, I want to give a shout out to Senator Keenan. Every year, it seems, we've had a lot of successes up at the State House, a bill that allowed us to, for instance, do electronic recording. But this will be our third legislative session where Senator Keenan, files a bill that requires mortgage assignments to be recorded at the registry. On the recorded land side. It has to be done on the land court side. What does that mean? Well, when a bank assigns the mortgage to some other bank or lender, they don't always record the assignments, and it's not required under the statute. I think common sense, it should be required so that when all our records in Norfolk County are back online, back to 1793. They could just go online and just follow the trail and say, oh, that's who's got my mortgage. You know, everyone remembers who they kind of were paying. You know, some outfit out in Minnesota somewhere. But when it comes to, hey, wait a minute, I need to get my mortgage discharged, I don't know where to start. If those assignments were recorded, it would just make it a lot better for the consumer. So my compliments, you know, to Senator Keenan and you know, for filing that bill. You know, he works with the Registers of Deeds Association, and it's the third legislative session. Each session is 2 years, and we'll keep fighting the good fight. I think it is good for the consumer. We
only have a few minutes left. I do want to talk about consumer protection and talk about briefly scams that are out there, because there's a scam for just about everything.
I always mention, you know, the deed scams, and again, if you need a copy of your deed, come to the registry directly. Some of these groups try to charge people $60 to $86 to get, you know, a document that you can get directly from us. And when we go, you know, Quincy is great. We just recently had our office hours there in the fall. We give copies of the deeds free. But along that lines, we do have a consumer notification service. We've had over 900 people sign up, and I think 91 people from Quincy have signed up. It's all done by email. I've signed up myself, so I get a notice when something pertaining to, my name's Bill O'Donnell, anything pertaining to a William O'Donnell comes through, it sends me an email, and I check. And luckily, it doesn't pertain to me, but the FBI says the fastest growing crime as far as white collar has been property fraud and deed fraud, mortgage fraud. So if I get a notice and all of a sudden I look up and say, wait a minute, that's a deed to my house, I didn't sign that document, or that's a mortgage that's encumbering my property. We haven't prevented the fraud, and I haven't seen it around Norfolk County, but it's happened nationally. We haven't prevented the fraud, but it gets you on it right away, so you can get to the law enforcement agencies and you know get to court and start straightening this out, so that you know the biggest asset's your home, and it's a way to protect it. So you could just go on our website at www.norfolkdeeds.org and sign up for the consumer notification service. I think it's well worth it.
And lastly, I'd like to talk about the Homestead Act and what folks can do to basically increase their protection.
Yes, the homestead, the state legislators write the law in there for a reason. It's a relatively simple document to file, and you get $500,000 worth of protection. Thank you, legislators. When I started as a register, it was $300,000. And again, if you own property, and it has to be your principal residence, that's what the homestead means in Massachusetts. And if you're lucky enough at 18 to be owning property, you can put a homestead on. The legislators allow people who are 62 and above. They have what they call an elderly homestead for people that are 62 and above. And what it does is, it doesn't prevent that creditor from chasing you, but it prevents the forced sale of the home. So again, the intent is to keep people in their homes. So that's what the homestead is about. You know, the good news is the legislators did pass a law that gives you an automatic homestead, but it's $125,000 and it gets apportioned accordingly. You know, for a relatively modest filing fee of $35, I'd rather get that extra protection, and it's well worth doing. Again, our homes, our biggest asset, so take the steps to protect it, and you can do that by the homestead, and we have information about the homestead on our website that you can check.
And we just have, I believe, 1 minute. I just want to find out how the food pantry drive went, and of course the Toys for Tots.
Again, many thanks to you. You do the public service announcement, and we had a great food pantry response. And again, it's because of people coming in, helping people out. And our 13th year with the Toys for Tots, and it was great. And that really took off. Each year it gets better and better, but that's because of Quincy Access Television, just spreading the word. And your public service announcements went out countywide, and that's it's helpful. So we try to be, relevant at the registry, trying to help people out where we can.
Well, thanks again for stopping by and giving us this update. We'll see you in short order to continue with the updates on a quarterly basis.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you at home for watching. You have been watching a program of Quincy Access Television. Please continue to watch QATV for more locally produced programming.